heavy and tense. After a moment, I managed to find my voice, a mix of hurt and outrage barely contained.
I can't believe this. How could you do this? After everything, to come to me with such a betrayal. How long has this been going on? Who is he?
Becky looked at me with some anger and said, "Using mean words won't solve anything, honey. I hope you can move past your feelings and we can continue living as we have for the past few years. I won't tell you how long this has been going on or when or where it happens, and I definitely won't tell you who I'm intimate with. It's none of your business, and if I catch you snooping around, I'll have to take actions you won't like."
I've been seeing someone else and I'm done hiding it. I need to be honest because the sneaking around is too much. I want to be upfront about when I go out so you can take care of the kids. But I won't tell you who he is to avoid trouble. If you try to do something bad to him or me, it won't end well, especially for our kids who need you. Just know, if you try to hurt us, there will be consequences. Once again, I sat there shocked at how calmly Becky laid out her information. She seemed so sure, so prepared. It was clear she had been planning this moment for a while. Despite my thoughts and comments, she had an answer for everything. I said, "I should probably call the guys and let them know I won't be going on this trip. We need to sort some things out and I have a lot on my plate." I reached for my phone, but Becky grabbed my hand. Becky looked me straight in the eyes and said, "No, you're going on this trip. The kids will stay with your parents as we arranged. I don't plan on being alone for the next 2 weeks, and I don't want you around to cause any trouble or try to find out who I'll be with. You need this time away to process everything. I've made sure you'll actually go on this trip, and you won't like the consequences if you don't. You'll regret it if you change your plans now. My friends and I have everything covered. We have sources in town and almost everywhere you might go. If you try anything to find out about my lover or disrupt our lives, I'll find out, and you'll face serious consequences. You have to accept that my plan is solid, and it's what's best for me. If you cooperate, I'll make sure you don't have a miserable life. You'll continue living much like you have been." Becky went over to the desk and took out a thick envelope from her drawer of papers. She came back to me and handed it over. "Here, so you'll believe me. We made a written report of all your actions for the past month. Read it and you'll see we have it all down. We're aware of everything you do, and if you try to interfere with our plans, we'll know, and I won't go easy on you. Now I'm heading to bed. If you want some action tonight, come up. You'll see not much has to change unless you start causing trouble." I sat there in shock. Who was this woman? And what happened to my wife? I thought I knew her, but now I discover she's conniving and unfaithful. I watched her go upstairs, her hips swaying seductively. She knew she looked amazing and she was using it tonight, but for once, it didn't faze me at all. Finally, I opened the envelope and started reading. I was shocked. The report on me was incredibly detailed, capturing things I'd forgotten until I read them. It seemed like someone had been monitoring my every move, noting even minor incidents like spilling something on my shirt. It documented my glances at other women, something natural for anyone. The thoroughness of the report made me wonder if someone wealthy or connected was behind it, given its detail and scope. The report contained private details, including conversations I thought were private. This made me question if I was being bugged. As I considered my next steps, particularly how to leave my cheating wife without losing out in a divorce, I realized I needed advice. My lifelong friends, who shared a complicated history with me and Becky, seemed like the go-to, but then a dreadful thought struck me. What if Becky was involved with one of them? Seeking their counsel could backfire if the traitor was among them, sabotaging my plans before they even started. Just as I was deep in thought, Becky called out from the top of the stairs, provocatively suggesting I join her in bed rather than mulling over things alone. She then returned to our bedroom, leaving me to consider my next move in this complex situation. I never did go to bed. I spent the night on the couch in the den. Becky woke me up when she started making breakfast. She was mad and made sure I knew it. "Get your sorry butt up, Dave. You need to clean up and get ready for work before the kids notice you didn't sleep in your own room last night. When you come back in 2 weeks, I expect you to act normal. If you mess things up in the family, I've already warned you about the consequences. I'm willing to meet your needs sometimes, but I expect you to do your part too. Just so you know, if you find another woman, I'm filing for divorce." I could feel the rage building up inside me. I yelled, "What's going on? You can mess around and think it's fine, but I can't do the same? Not that I want to, but why is it okay for you and not for me?" Becky smirked and said, "Come on, Dave. We both know you're satisfied with what you're getting from me now. If you go out looking for someone else, it's just to get back at me. I only seek outside the marriage because you're not meeting my needs as a husband. If you could give me what I need, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere, and I expect the same from you." I stammered. I was so mad I could barely talk, but I finally managed to respond. "I can't believe this. You never once talked to me about needing more or wanting to try something different in bed. You never asked me to do anything we don't normally do. How was I supposed to know you wanted something else if you never told me?" "I always made sure you were satisfied. Most of the time, you had multiple orgasms before we were done. How could I know something was missing when you acted like everything was fine and I was happy?" Becky stood there, then said, "Well, if you're asking now, you're really clueless, huh? It's not just about quantity, dear. It's about quality. You never learned how to please me, and I realized you never would. So I started getting what I needed elsewhere. Now, get dressed. I'm tired of hearing you complain." I went upstairs and went through my usual morning routine. We had a quiet breakfast, and when our son Sean asked what was wrong, I started to explain. But Becky interrupted, saying, "Your father's just dealing with a little issue. He'll be fine after his vacation." She shot me a glare before focusing on her breakfast. At work, I decided to ignore some of Becky's advice and canceled my trip with the guys. We were supposed to leave straight from work and meet at our favorite Denny's to drive together. I had a spacious F-150 truck, so we'd load our gear into it. Roger would ride with me, and Don would take his car since he had to return on Wednesday. I talked to Roger, explaining that something had come up, and I couldn't make it. I offered to let him use my truck to haul the gear. Roger exclaimed, "Oh, Dave, that's not happening. I just spoke to Becky, and she warned me you might try this. She mentioned you've been stressed lately, but she checked with your secretary and confirmed you have nothing important scheduled. I promised her I'd ensure you take this trip. If I have to, I'll come find you. You're coming with us, and you're going to enjoy yourself." I started to object and refuse outright, but then I felt a twinge of fear. What if Roger was... No, Becky said she was leaving this weekend, and Roger was joining me. But wait, Kenny was staying home and coming up midweek. Could it be him or someone else? I was stuck. I needed to think more and make plans. I wanted to buy some surveillance equipment, but how? From the report I read, Becky and her friends tracked my credit card purchases, phone calls, and even cash withdrawals. They could spot unusual spending overnight. I was sitting at my desk, lost in thought, when Becky called. As soon as I answered, she launched into a tirade. "David, I told you to go on your trip, and it's not wise for you to try to snoop into my affairs. Roger just informed me that you tried to back out. This is your final warning. Don't mess with me, or you'll lose everything and never see your children again. Do you understand this time?" She hung up abruptly, leaving me stunned once again. Roger had betrayed me. Did that mean he was involved, or was he genuinely concerned for me? Come to think of it, my old friends didn't seem as close as they used to be. It felt like they were now Becky's friends, and I was just tagging along. Could it be? Nah, not all of them. Anyway, I decided to go on the trip and met the guys at Denny's. While they were joking around, I sat gloomily. Finally, Don asked me what was wrong. I hesitated for a moment, then said, "Becky has some crazy idea, and I don't know how to deal with it. I can hardly believe she meant what she said, but if she did, my marriage is in trouble." Roger glanced at Don and remarked, "You know Becky's style, Don. She rang me up earlier today saying Loverboy here was trying to bail on our trip. She mentioned he's been on edge and hard to deal with lately and could use this time off to clear his head. I assured her we'd ensure he joined us and had a good time." Don chimed in, "Yeah, I've noticed his moodiness too over the past few months. He hasn't been as lively with us. A little adjustment in attitude won't hurt. And we can help with that. I've got beer and his favorite whiskey in my car." Turning to me, he added, "Nothing used to stop us from enjoying our cabin time. Sure, the ladies won't be there this time, but hey, more drinks and stories for us." We headed out, driving to the fishing spot by the stream. It was a short 2-hour ride, and we arrived in time for some serious drinking before bed. The next morning, both guys insisted on fishing, so we set off. The fishing helped me forget about the past few days, but thoughts of Becky crept back as we returned to the cabin. I couldn't believe she meant what she said, but it lingered in my mind. Instead of focusing on what I needed to do, I let the guys convince me to keep drinking with them. Later, during supper, as we continued drinking, Don looked at me and asked, "Okay, Dave, spill it. You look like you lost your best buddy, but I'm still here. What's eating you?" I thought, why not? If I didn't talk to someone I trusted, I'd lose it. These guys were trustworthy. We'd been pals since school started.
I spilled the beans to Don and Roger about my marriage's declining bed life over the last 3 years and Becky's bombshell from Thursday evening. After I finished, Don looked at me and said, "Wow, Dave, are you sure that's what Becky said? I can't believe she'd even think something like that. We've known her for years and she's the sweetest, most caring woman I know." "Yeah, I know, but that's exactly what she said, as far as I recall." "Is it really true?" Don leaned back and said, "Well, Dave, I can't predict the outcome of a divorce, but she's right about some things. If she's really doing what you say, you have to decide how to handle it. If she's discreet, you need to consider if breaking up the family and the emotional toll on the children, you and Becky, is worth it. In custody battles, the courts usually favor the mother. Unless she's proven unfit, you'd likely lose custody of your kids. It's true you'd have to financially support them until they're grown, including college expenses. Because she doesn't work, you'd have to pay alimony until she remarries. You might lose your home, either giving it to her or selling it and splitting the money. You'd also have to share your savings and retirement funds. Child support is calculated by a formula that heavily burdens the supporting parent. Expect to lose a big chunk of your income for child support. You'd also need to provide health care for the kids. Dave was stunned. Hearing his attorney friend lay out the situation was even worse than Becky warning him about the consequences of her infidelity. "I have to know. She won't tell me whom she is with, and I need to know. When I find out, I will make sure she isn't with him any longer." "Dave, as your friend, I get where you're coming from. But as a court officer, I have to advise against that. It's tough, but I'm obligated to report these things. If harm comes to any of Becky's lovers, I'll have to report you. My suggestion? Just deal with it and keep things normal. Maybe if she's cheating, she'll change her mind or get it out of her system. Either way, it seems like sticking to the status quo would be better for you."
Don, I can't believe you're saying this. How would you feel if Shelley did something like that and threatened you? Would you just accept her cheating like Becky expects me to?
Don looked uneasy and said, "No, I'd probably be as upset as you are. But I trust Shelley wouldn't do that. She loves me and knows I'm the best partner she could have. I provide for our family and she wouldn't risk losing that or hurting our kids or me. Buddy, you should just accept your situation. If Becky's as vigilant as you say based on that report, you're in trouble. If you try to investigate her affair, she'll find out and retaliate. Heck, she might even know about this conversation if she's monitoring you closely. Did she know where we were going? Shoot, I didn't even think about that. Darn it, now I have more to worry about." Dave was confused by Roger's constant smile and Don's oddly happy expression during their conversation. He couldn't believe his friends were so relaxed about Becky treating him badly. Finally, he sighed, "Well, forget it. Let's just have some more drinks." The next morning, Dave woke up before his friends. Feeling the need for solitude, he grabbed his fishing gear and headed upstream to his favorite spot. Just as he was about to start fishing, his cell phone rang. He always kept it with him, although reception was spotty in some areas due to weak signals. He was surprised to get reception here. Seeing it was Becky calling, he chose not to answer. After Becky left a message, he listened to it. He was shocked to hear her say, "Well, honey, my sources say you got some good advice from Don last night. I hope you're going to follow it. I love you, and you're too good of a provider and father to lose. But if you do something foolish, I can manage the kids without you. Now have fun." Dave stared at the phone in disbelief. He knew the cabin didn't have cell service, and there was no landline. So how did she find out about his conversation with the guys? Oh no, his gear must be bugged, and someone must be nearby to pick up the transmission. He needed to search for it later. Dave didn't notice Roger and Don standing at the edge of the trees while he listened to the message. They grinned, gave each other a thumbs up, then vanished back into the woods, heading towards the cabin. Roger glanced at Don and asked, "Do you think that'll do it? Or should we keep the pressure on for a bit?" "I reckon we should keep those detailed reports going for a month or two, and we got to keep urging him to just accept it," Don replied. "We've got a good thing happening now. If we can persuade him to let Becky keep fooling around and spend some full nights and weekends with us, we'll be way ahead. Imagine how much better it'll be to have longer sessions with her without any time constraints. She's so hooked on what we give her in bed that she'll do anything we say just to have more. If we play it smart, he can clue in our wives about the issue, and we can tell them we're out at night helping him figure out what's going on. That'll be solid cover." Dave fished until nearly noon, but his mind wasn't on it. He spent most of his time pondering his marriage, trying to figure out how to uncover Becky's affair, end it, and get back at her. However, he knew he couldn't do anything until he found out who, when, where, and why, if possible.
On a cozy Friday evening, as the anticipation of their friend's arrival grew, Becky and the man beside her shared a warm, intimate moment. After spending the day preparing for a weekend at the cabin, they finally had some time to themselves. Becky, feeling playful and affectionate, approached him with a twinkle in her eye. She handed him a drink and sat close, their conversation flowing easily. The atmosphere was charged with excitement for the weekend ahead. They shared laughs, reminisced about past adventures, and eagerly discussed plans for the days to come. As they sat together, the connection between them deepened. Becky, feeling bold, leaned in for a tender kiss, which he warmly reciprocated. Their affectionate exchange soon turned into a gentle caress, as they continued to express their fondness for each other. Becky, feeling the warmth of the moment, whispered sweet nothings into his ear. The air was filled with anticipation, not just for the immediate tenderness they shared, but also for the joy that the coming days with their friends would bring. They talked about their friend's upcoming arrival, speculating with excitement about the activities they had planned. The mention of a friend's expected visit on Wednesday added to the bubbling excitement, sparking further conversation about the adventures that awaited them. As the evening progressed, they remained close, cherishing each other's company. Their connection was a testament to their deep bond, one that was amplified by the shared joy of the imminent reunion with their close friends. In that moment, they were reminded of the simple pleasures of companionship, the anticipation of good times ahead, and the beauty of moments spent with someone special. Becky exclaimed, "Oh God, I've been craving this for so long. I can't wait for the others to arrive. Isn't Dawn supposed to be here early Wednesday?" "Yeah, baby. Then you'll have both of us for 2 whole nights before I have to help babysit your loving hubby." "Oh God, I'll be so relieved when we can all 3 be together at once. Just being with 1 or 2 of you at a time has been tough after what you've done to me. There's no way Dave alone can satisfy me anymore. Do you think we've covered everything? I adore him, and he's a wonderful provider and father. I don't want to lose him." "Yeah, I think we can keep him in check." "Yeah, I just hope Dave doesn't start confiding in our wives and causing trouble. We've been doing fine the last 3 years. I think we should have been content with how things were instead of getting greedy like this. Having you to ourselves all night or on a long trip sounds nice, but I'm not sure we can push Dave this hard. We might have unleashed something uncontrollable." "Well, the bugs we planted and the few things we found that make him look bad should make him back off. I just wish he wasn't so straight and honorable. It's unbelievable we haven't found anything shady he's done. How can a man in business for himself not take advantage of situations to make extra cash? Oh, by the way, Becky, are you still keeping an eye on the finances and transactions like we discussed? Yeah, I convinced the bank to limit his cash withdrawals, but I can't control his check writing. At least we can track them if he does. I wish I had a way to monitor the business more closely. Now I regret pushing him to hire office help so I could stay home with the kids and be a housewife." Becky chuckled, then added, "Of course, if I hadn't insisted on staying home, we wouldn't be having as much fun, would we? I was so frustrated only being with you all a couple nights a month or on trips. Being a stay-at-home mom allowed us to play more. And now, with this plan, we can play whenever we want." Dave was gloomy and preoccupied by the river. His friends attempted to chat with him and lift his spirits, but they weren't making much headway. They got him drunk on Tuesday evening. After he passed out from intoxication, Don and Roger retreated to the porch to converse quietly. Roger expressed concern, saying, "I'm starting to fret, Don. We've been talking to him for 4 days, and if anything, he's becoming more determined to leave Becky and seek revenge on her lover. He's on the brink of exploding and going wild. How are we going to manage this situation now? It all seemed so promising and simple when we devised the plan to control him and spend more time with her. What if he finds out and tells our wives?" Don reassured him, saying, "Relax, Roger. I can manipulate him in the divorce proceedings and paint her as an angel. Even if she does divorce him, so what? We only embarked on this because she said she wanted to keep him around. I'll admit, banging her while she's married to him gives me a thrill, but she'd still be just as enjoyable if she weren't married. We just need to prevent him and our wives from discovering the truth so we don't get screwed over. We might need to resort to some physical persuasion, but let's wait and see how things unfold in a week or 2. Dave couldn't hear the conversation clearly, but he had awakened and caught snippets of their discussion on the front porch. He understood they were upset that he was stubborn about accepting Becky's infidelity, and they believed they needed to convince him to be more tolerant. Now, not only was he angry with her, but he was also angry with them.
Before drifting back to sleep, he resolved to handle the situation without their assistance. Over the next few days, Dave grew more distant from his friends. Roger and Kenny grew genuinely concerned when all he would say about the situation was, "I'm going to find out who the woman is sleeping with, and both she and they are going to pay big time." Finally, the day arrived for them to head home. Once again, Roger rode with Dave, but there was no conversation in the truck. Kenny drove his own car, and as soon as they reached an area with good cell service, he called Don. Don and Becky sat in Dave's living room and listened as Kenny reported on Dave. "He's boiling with anger. If anything, he's even more determined to make you pay than he was when I got to the cabin. I'm not sure what to do, but I think we should lay low until he calms down. If he catches us, it could get ugly." Becky sat in shock, tears streaming down her cheeks, and she was almost hyperventilating. Don, with clenched jaws and a red face, sat beside her. After a brief conversation with Kenny, Don turned to Becky. He pulled her close and began caressing her breasts to calm her down. As he touched her, he said, "Becky, don't worry. I didn't want to resort to drastic measures if we didn't have to. But it seems like we have no choice now. See how he behaves this weekend and let me know on Sunday evening. If it seems like he's going to cause trouble, we'll file on Monday. I can freeze all your personal accounts, and I believe I can freeze the business accounts pending court approval for all expenditures. We can convince the judge that he might drain your accounts and ruin the business if we don't take control." Dave came home late on Friday night and found Becky in the living room, looking upset as though she had been crying. She seemed disheveled and was only wearing one of his shirts. As Dave walked by, he noticed something odd about her appearance that made him very upset. Becky looked at him defiantly and seemed to be provoking him with her posture. Dave was really angry and just walked by Becky without saying anything. Becky tried to follow him into their bedroom and even attempted to join him in the shower, but Dave firmly told her to leave, expressing his disappointment and anger about the situation. He told her that he had hoped they could resolve their issues, but now he felt there was no chance for that. Dave warned Becky that even though she had hurt him, he would find a way to respond to her actions and those of the person or people she was involved with. After getting himself together, Dave quickly packed his things into his truck, going back and forth from the house. While packing, he overheard Becky on the phone. One of the last things he tried to do before leaving was to transfer money from their joint bank accounts. But he discovered he was locked out because the password had been changed. This made him even more angry. Turning around, he saw Becky watching him, which only added to his frustration. Becky appeared remorseful as she spoke. "I hoped you'd come to your senses and we wouldn't reach this point. You realize you're making a grave mistake, right? I love you more than any man I've ever known. I don't want to lose you. If you persist, you'll risk losing the business and everything we've built. Just so you're aware, I've hired Don as my lawyer. I just spoke with him and informed him of your behavior. He'll be in touch." Dave was stunned. He knew Don was also her friend, but geez, he'd been Dave's attorney since he started practicing law. He couldn't believe Don would betray him like this. Dave left his home and drove straight to his office and warehouse complex. He planned to stay in his office and conference room for a while. On the way in, he stopped at the gate and spoke to the guard. "I'm having some trouble with my wife. She and her lover have threatened me. I need you to call in extra security and keep all unauthorized persons off the property." Saturday morning around 10 a.m., Dave was leaving the complex to grab breakfast when he got halted at the gate. A man approached him, confirmed his identity, then handed him an envelope saying, "You've been served." After the man left, Dave opened the envelope and found a restraining order. It stated that he couldn't come within 300 feet of his wife, children, or their home. Additionally, there was an order requiring court approval for any expenditures from his personal or business accounts, preventing him from depleting the company's assets before divorce proceedings, which were set to start the following Monday. After breakfast, Dave went to his assistant's house. When she opened the door, she remarked, "Dave, you look awful. What's wrong?" "I need to talk. I need help, and you're the only person I can trust. I'm sorry to bother you on the weekend, but I'm in trouble, and I have no idea who I can trust or talk to. She stepped back and gestured for Dave to come in. "Come on in, Dave. Would you like some coffee?" Dave followed her into the kitchen, where he saw her husband, Thaddeus, sitting at the table. It seemed he had interrupted their brunch, as there were plates with eggs still on the table. "I'm sorry. I guess I should leave. Thaddeus looked up at Dave and said, "You look terrible, Dave. Sit down and talk to us, for heaven's sake." Dave slowly recounted to the couple everything that had happened in his life since 2 weeks ago Thursday. Then he expressed, "I'm at a loss for what to do now or how to help myself. My supposed best friends spent the last 2 weeks urging me to let Becky continue her affair on the side. They argue that since she's been doing it for years and I never noticed, why should I disrupt things? And now, Don, my former best friend, is collaborating with Becky as her attorney, entangling me in legal complications. I can't even spend money without court approval, and I can't get that until at least Monday. My best friend has taken Becky's case, so I'm cut off there. I'm not even sure I have enough money to eat. All my credit cards were declined when I tried to pay for breakfast." Gertrude leaned back and said, "Dave, I can't believe Becky would do this to you." She turned to her husband and asked, "Thad, can't we offer him some financial assistance?" Her husband nodded in agreement. Dave sat at the table feeling angry, helpless, and determined to seek retribution like never before. Thad pondered for a moment before stating, "If what you say is true, you need some serious help. I just hope there isn't a bug hidden in your clothes somewhere." His eyes narrowed, and he added, "Come with me, Dave." They headed downstairs into the walkout basement. Stopping at the bottom of the stairs, Thad instructed, "Dave, undress right now and give me your clothes. There's a shower over there, and I'll bring you some of my clothes to wear. I'll take yours to the front door. After you've cleaned up, we'll talk. I doubt there's a bug in our house, but they might have followed you here and planted a listening device outside." Dave changed into some old sweatpants belonging to Thad, and then all three of them retreated into a cement storm shelter beneath the stairway. He felt foolish as he began to speak, but Thad and Gertrude stopped him. They spent the next hour communicating through written notes, planning out their course of action. After covering all possible scenarios, Thad left to contact individuals whom he believed could assist Dave. They agreed that Dave would have minimal interaction with these people, and Thad and Gertrude would lend him the necessary funds to start the investigation. While it was assumed that Becky would halt her activities, they planned to monitor her and Dave's 3 friends for a while. On Sunday, Dave, Thad, and Gertrude decided to catch up over lunch, enjoying each other's company and sharing laughs. At the same time, Becky hosted a meeting at her house with Don, Kenny, and Roger to discuss some pressing matters. After their meeting concluded, they all took a moment to relax and share their thoughts on the situation. Roger, looking concerned, broke the silence. "I'm feeling uneasy about all this," he admitted. "I'm not sure if it was a good idea to meet today. What if Dave finds out we were here? Maybe we should keep a low profile until we figure things out. We had a stable situation for over 3 years, and pushing the boundaries now seems risky. I'm worried this might not end well for us." He continued to share his anxieties about recent events, expressing doubt over their strategy and concern over Dave's recent activities, particularly his time spent with his secretary and her husband. Roger mentioned that their surveillance hadn't picked up anything suspicious, but he was still nervous about the potential repercussions of their actions and decisions. "Stop complaining. We've got Dave completely under control. He's unable to access any money, and we're keeping such close tabs on him that we'll know his every move before he even makes it. Right now, he's with his personal assistant and her husband, feeling sorry for himself. If he tries to leave, we'll be alerted before he's even out of sight. He can't even make a call without us knowing what he's saying, whether it's from his phone or hers." On Monday morning, Dave started searching for a new attorney to represent him. He spoke with several and scheduled appointments with 2. It was a challenge for him because Don had been his legal counsel for years, but now that Don was representing Becky, he had to find someone else. Eventually, he decided to hire Sally Hawk, who impressed him during the interview and came highly recommended. Their first course of action was to initiate legal proceedings to release Dave's business accounts and secure enough funds for his living expenses. They also opted to hire another private investigator firm to monitor Becky. Dave authorized wiretaps on his house and video surveillance. Furthermore, he gave Sally the green light to start divorce proceedings based on adultery. Later that evening, Thad handed Dave the footage captured the previous day. Naturally, Dave was devastated. Discovering that Becky was involved with all 3 of his friends only fueled his anger further. However, he now knew who he was up against. The following morning, he went to his office and made 5 copies of the CD. He distributed one to each of his friends' wives, one to his attorney, kept one for himself, and placed the original in a safe deposit box. Additionally, he uploaded the video to various amateur XXX sites on the internet, using the participants' real names. He set up the site as pay-per-view, with the funds directed from a PayPal account to a bank in the Cayman Islands. He smirked, realizing Don had given him a key to his office, allowing Dave to set up the site from there, implicating Don if the tracing led back. Dave also sent still images of Becky's actions to several of her friends and family members via email. He executed all of this, using the free computers at the college library to avoid suspicion. Although he briefly considered using Don's office, he dismissed the idea, knowing it would appear suspicious as Don wouldn't engage in such activities. Using the college computers was straightforward for Dave. He had done so multiple times before without getting caught. Despite the requirement of a student ID card and password for logging in, Dave often found machines left logged on, allowing him to use someone else's credentials. Moreover, the lack of CCTV security cameras at the local college meant he didn't need to worry about being captured on video in the vicinity. On Wednesday, Dave had a blast fielding phone calls from people who had watched the video. In the early afternoon, Becky called him in tears. She asked, "How could you do that? I thought you loved me. I told you it was just Zex because you couldn't give me what I needed. How could you ruin my life like that?" Dave chuckled and replied, "Rebecca, I didn't ruin your life. You did. I'm just delivering the payback I promised if you went through with your plans. Frankly, now that I think about it, I'm pretty sure you've been cheating on me for a while. There were plenty of times when one of the guys would make sure I was out and I'd come home late. A lot of things that didn't add up then make sense now. By the time I'm done with you and those jerks, you'll regret ever doing this." Later that afternoon, Becky's sister called. She said, "You poor fool. Looks like you finally figured out about your oh-so-perfect wife. I assume you're the one who sent this video. Well, now it seems she and I can share the boys. I didn't know she was with them until I got this." Dave shuddered as she hung up, her maniacal laughter echoing in his mind all night. Don also called, and as soon as Dave answered, he started yelling. Dave played along upon realizing it was Don. He kept Don on the line for almost 15 minutes. Don made threats of both physical and legal harm, saying, "You jerk. By the time I'm through with you, you'll wish you never crossed me. I'll have your wife whenever I want, and we'll have most of your money too. If you had just done what I told her, you'd still have a family, money, and a life. After I'm done with you, I'll have the guys rough you up. I've been with that girl since high school, and I'll continue to be long after you're gone, you jerk. Enjoy living in the dumps because that's where you'll be when I'm through. I'll file every lawsuit I can find and bleed you dry just to defend against them." Later calls from Becky's parents were distressing. Her mother was in tears as she asked, "Dave, how could you do this to Becky? I understand she hurt you deeply, but spreading pictures of her everywhere was too vengeful. Couldn't you have resolved this in a more civilized way?" By the time Dave decided to head home for the evening, he felt content with his actions so far. He was confident that the computerized answering system his company had installed would prove its worth, especially from the recordings it made that day alone. Initially, he had concerns about how his then-attorney and friend Don advised him to set up the system with the telecom provider. When a call came in, the computer would answer and give a warning before recording began. The warning stated, "Thank you for calling Central U.S. Inventory, Logistics, and Security Company. All phone calls are recorded for later use. If you do not want your call recorded, please hang up now. If you wish to speak to someone, please press 0 to be connected to an operator." It seemed Don either didn't consider the warning or was too furious to heed it, because all his threats and boasting were captured after the warning he insisted on including in the system. Dave saw this as poetic justice. Unfortunately, all the individuals involved in Becky's circle stopped associating with her once the legal cases were initiated. Fortunately, Thad's acquaintance managed to capture video and audio recordings on the first Saturday, as none of the private investigators recorded any incriminating evidence. While some suspicious phone calls were obtained, they were mostly ambiguous and of little use. One of Sally's initial actions was to report Don to the State Bar Association. His law license was promptly suspended, and he was permanently disbarred due to his unethical conduct and threats, even before the divorce and legal proceedings concluded. Dave's divorce was finalized, with Becky receiving a small portion, around 25%, of the marital assets. Dave retained ownership of his company. Furthermore, Dave was granted custody of the children, primarily due to a subtle detail initially overlooked. During the photo session, when Thad's acquaintance captured images of Becky and the others, they inadvertently photographed another individual. This picture not only captured the scene of the event, but also showed a child peeking into the house from the backyard through the patio door. When the judge saw this evidence, full custody of the children was awarded to Dave. Dave's legal actions against Don proved highly successful. He was awarded $1.3 million in damages for breaching attorney-client privilege and for Don's misconduct in representing Becky while still acting as Dave's attorney. Don faced censure for his inappropriate relationship with Becky and various ethical violations, leading to fines payable to the state. As Dave pursued legal recourse against Don, Don's financial situation deteriorated significantly, nearing bankruptcy. Meanwhile, Shelley, Don's wife, depleted most of their remaining marital assets during their divorce. Similarly, Pam, Kenny's wife, received a significant portion of his assets after their divorce. Surprisingly, Roger and Trixie remained married, as it was revealed that Trixie had willingly engaged in the group's activities. However, Roger grew discontented with his friend's continued exploitation of Trixie. When Don and Kenny moved in with Roger after being ousted from their homes, tensions escalated. Kenny's frustration boiled over one evening, leading to a violent altercation where he assaulted Don and Roger. Kenny was hospitalized due to injuries sustained in the fight, and Don and Kenny were subsequently convicted and sentenced to a year in jail. Consequently, Roger and Trixie ended their marriage. Reflecting on these events nearly a year later, Dave and Gertrude discussed a news article detailing the conflict involving Don, Kenny, and Roger over Trixie. Gertrude then inquired whether Dave maintained any contact with Rebecca, noting her supervised visits with their children. Dave glanced at her and replied firmly, "No, we only communicate when necessary, usually about the kids. I have no interest in speaking with her, and if I could avoid it entirely, I would." "I was just curious. You two seemed perfect for years, and then—" "Well, I've always wondered if you knew why she did what she did. I just can't comprehend why a woman who loves her husband would act that way." Dave gazed at Gertrude, feeling a knot form in his stomach. He clenched his jaw and bit his lip before reaching into his desk drawer. Retrieving a folder, he handed it to Gertrude. "I don't know why I held on to this letter. I'm not even sure why I agreed to read it. Remember when Becky's mother visited the office in tears about 7 months ago? She gave me this letter and insisted I read it before she left, so I did." Gertrude opened the folder and read the following. "Dear David, you may question why I still call you dearest, but despite everything, you're the man I love. I've made mistakes that hurt you, and for that, I'm deeply sorry. My actions weren't intentional, but I need to come clean about them. Our past relationships with our high school friends were complicated, but they didn't affect us until I made a mistake on our 9th anniversary. You were busy with work, and I ended up drinking too much at a Valentine's Day party. Feeling lonely, things took a turn when Don and Kenny drove me home. Reminiscing about past encounters led to a moment of weakness where I gave in to temptation with them. That night, I experienced feelings and pleasures that were intense and new. This led to more encounters with them, sometimes individually or together, whenever you were away. These moments were filled with excitement and fear of getting caught, which somehow added to the thrill. Don later suggested an arrangement to avoid the risk of getting caught, believing you might accept it to keep our family intact. I convinced myself you might agree, hoping to avoid losing you and our children. But I realize now how much pain and betrayal my actions have caused you. I'm truly sorry for the hurt I've caused. I hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Yours always, Becky." Gertrude glanced up after reading the letter. Her eyes were teary, but she held back her anger. "Dave, I truly believe she still loves you more than anyone else. I know she's hurting. But Dave, she was nearly as much a victim as you were. I think your friend Don was a predator. You know, over the years, we've both heard some terrible rumors about him. I wouldn't be surprised if he intentionally got her drunk that first night. No man of high moral character, no true friend would take advantage of her like she said he did." "Yeah, I know, Gertie, but... Well, I'm not entirely sure she gave me the whole truth there. She always seemed to pay more attention to Don than I would have liked. I brushed it off, but there were several times we argued after a party because I thought she was too friendly, letting him take too many liberties. But I never caught them in anything substantial to confront them about. I have to admit, after Don's phone call when I finally caught them, thanks to you and Thad, I had enough doubts to get DNA tests done on the children. You can't imagine how relieved I was when the test confirmed I was their father. Well, anyway, I believe she thinks she loves me, but I don't think it's genuine love. It's more like infatuation, maybe a deep affection. I was easy to live with, a good provider and father. I now realize I was probably her last choice, and we married because... Well, I'm not sure why she married me. I loved her deeply, but I don't think she felt that same depth of love for me. I believe that's why she cheated and continued to do so. She was selfish and only cared about her own pleasure, needs, and desires.